900 sailors dived into the black waters of the Pacific, but after 5 interminable days of terror, only 316 would survive to tell the story. This is not simply a survival tale, it's the worst U.S. Navy disaster in history. In this video, we lift the lid on a catastrophe which tested human endurance to the limit. A tale of bravery, agony, and survival against odds no man was ever destined to encounter. But first, before we go deeply into this riveting tale, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more untold history, and ring the bell so you never miss the legends who made our world what it is. But to really comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy that would ultimately take place, we must first examine the ship itself, a warship both mighty and proud, born for triumph, yet fated for tragedy. The USS Indianapolis CA-35, which was commissioned in 1932, was a Portland-class heavy cruiser. Initially, she was built lightly, but since her 8-inch guns packed such a destructive punch, she was reassigned as a heavy cruiser. She was streamlined, quick, and heavily armed, a ship built not only to sail, but to command. During World War II, the Indianapolis made herself a force to be contended with. In 1942, she protected carriers at New Guinea and attacked Japanese troops with sudden wrath. In 1943, she roared across the Aleutian Islands, dropping fire on enemy positions and sinking supply ships to the bottom. At Tarawa, her guns battered fortifications, opening the way to American soldiers. But her function wasn't firepower alone, it was command. As flagship to Admiral Raymond Spruance, she assisted in commanding battles that defined the war itself. At Philippine Sea and Iwo Jima, her guns thundered as she supplied the cover essential to victory. So by 1945, the Indianapolis was one of the most seasoned and decorated ships in the entire U.S. Navy. Had her tail stopped there, the Indianapolis would have been known as a Pacific champion, a ship of victory and power. But history had other plans. Her most important mission did not reside in the victories already achieved. Rather, it lingered just over the horizon. A mission so secretive, so crucial, and so perilous that it would alter not just the war, but the destiny of every man on board her. If the USS Indianapolis had completed her service after decades of triumphs, America would still be honoring her as one of the Navy's finest warships. But destiny had picked her for something much riskier and much more clandestine. In July of 1945, the Indianapolis was given a mission shrouded in secrecy. No fanfare, no headlines, only an encrypted order that only a handful of those on board could even attempt to understand. Her assignment? To carry the most powerful weapon man had ever made. Within her belly were uranium and key parts of the atomic bomb, famously called Little Boy later. In a world still entrenched in a deadly war, this was not merely significant, it was history in the making. The cruiser cut across the Pacific with unprecedented speed, clocking a record by arriving at Pearl Harbor in a mere 74.5 hours. She continued on, cutting a swath across the ocean until, on July 26, 1945, her cargo was safely delivered to Tinian Island, launching pad for a weapon that would shortly shake the globe. The men had done the impossible, but there was no time to rejoice, no moment to pause. Commands were snapped out. Plot a course for Leyte. What they didn't realize was terrifying. Lurking silently in the waters ahead was a silent killer, waiting to pounce. The Indianapolis, just completing the most critical mission of the war, was now steaming directly into the deadliest phase of her history. July 30, 1945 was a peaceful night with no light when the USS Indianapolis navigated alone through the Pacific. It was 12:15 a.m. when the serenity was broken. From the depths of the sea, the Japanese submarine, the I-58, launched its torpedoes, and death hurtled toward the cruiser. The initial blow hit the bow, flooding spaces within seconds. Before the crew could move, the second torpedo blasted through the ship's middle, setting fire to fuel tanks and ammo. Fire and explosions ripped through the decks as madness engulfed the ship. The Indianapolis was already overloaded with extra armament, her stability tenuous. Now, with fire burning and water sweeping through the ship, she capsized. The crew battled in vain, but the vessel was lost. In a dozen minutes, she rolled onto her side, her stern shooting high against the black sky before disappearing into the sea. Dozens of men were left thrashing in the darkness, clinging to existence as their warship slipped beneath the surface. The sinking of the USS Indianapolis was merely the start of the nightmare. For the 900 men who escaped on life rafts, survival vests, or scrap pieces of wood, the real test of life started when the cruiser went down. They were stranded on the open Pacific, holding on to life rafts, survival vests, or fragments of wreckage, adrift in a huge ocean that quickly transformed from sanctuary into a liquid hell. Initially, there was silence interrupted by the calls for assistance and the slap of the waves. But with the break of dawn, the survivors knew they were not alone. The first shadows materialized below them, swift, whirling predators. Oceanic, white-tip sharks arrived in schools, accompanied by tiger sharks, attracted by the blood and mayhem of the sinking. Initially, the predators preyed on the dead, pulling lifeless corpses into the depths. But soon, hunger compelled them to attack the living. Men told of the horror of seeing a shipmate vanish in an instant whirlpool of water, a scream abruptly silenced as the ocean became scarlet. Some attempted to remain motionless, hoping they would not be noticed. Others bound themselves to stranded debris, only to be dragged savagely beneath the surface by invisible jaws. Survivors estimated later that dozens, as many as 150, were lost to sharks during those 4 interminable days. But predators were not the sole adversary. The sun beat relentlessly by day, burning exposed skin and leaving men blistered and weak. At night, the temperature dropped, and the chill of the ocean seeped into their bones. Fatigue crept in as sleep became impossible, each moment shadowed by fear of an unseen fin cutting through the water. Worse was the thirst. With no fresh water, men became desperate. Others drank seawater, a death sentence. It only intensified their misery, causing hallucinations, organ damage, and a rapid descent into death. Witnesses described grisly scenes. Men who believed they spotted islands glinting on the horizon, swimming away in desperation, only to disappear into the sea. Others struggled brutally with delusory supplies, punching and stabbing comrades who were equally desperate. Hallucinations turned brothers against each other. Some said they saw ships on the horizon and swam towards them. Some insisted they heard voices or glimpsed freshwater fountains on the horizon. Madness swept through the clusters as men began attacking each other, fighting over canteens full of nothing but salt water. A few, crushed by despair, unbuckled their vests and slipped slowly below the surface, preferring the surety of death to the torture of waiting. For almost 5 days, the sea was prison and tomb. Of the 900 seamen who had gone into the water following the sinking, only 316 would survive to recount it. The others perished due to sharks, dehydration, exposure, or despair. It was one of America's worst naval tragedies, not only because it sank, but due to the inconceivable agony that ensued. Those who survived had the scars for life and aftermath of the horrible experience that transformed the Pacific into a site of horror, death, and inconceivable resilience. For more than 7 decades, the USS Indianapolis had appeared to disappear into mythology. Thousands of square miles of ocean had been scoured, but the sea yielded nothing. To most, the ship was not only lost, it had been engulfed whole by history itself. But in 2017, the unthinkable occurred. A team sponsored by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen broke past the past failures and plunged into one of the most isolated areas of the ocean. At almost 18,000 feet below a place where sunlight has never reached, they finally discovered her. What their cameras uncovered was nothing less than a chill. After 7 decades of silence, the wreck remained eerily intact. The anchor still bore its markings, as if to be recognized. Supply boxes, hidden in silt, still had the word Indianapolis in plain letters, a name cemented in time. Even paint clung tenaciously to steel, refusing the years. Robert Nayland, the head of underwater archaeology in the U.S. National Marine Sanctuary, spoke about the find in wonder. In 2018, the men were at last presented with the Congressional Gold Medal guaranteeing that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Their tale is not only history, it's legacy. And if you want more compelling stories like this, be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss an upload, and share it to keep their memory alive.